Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Dive Into Diet with Lucas Schmidt. What's going on, man?
Gonna talk about some dairy today.
You ready to dive into dairy?
I'm ready to dive into dairy. A pool full of dairy. I'm just kidding. Depends on the dairy, I guess.
Well, tell us, first of all, let's define dairy. What is it?
Dairy is a food group from milk from various animals. The most common animals that produce dairy are cow, sheep, and goat. So
Okay.
Those are your most common. All right. I'm sure there's some other ones out there, but we're mainly going to talk about those today.
Okay.
Dairy products, probably the most commonly used dairy product is milk still because so many people drink it. I don't drink cow's milk. I don't like the taste. I haven't since I was a kid. It's just not been my favorite. There's an aftertaste to it that I just didn't care for. But that doesn't mean, certain people out there shouldn't drink cow's milk. It just depends on your chemistry. So.
Well, tell us, is all milk bad? Like,
No,
because
no.
you hear it as like, oh, stay away from dairy.
Right.
Give us some reasons why dairy might be good, especially if you're not lactose intolerant.
Right. Dairy is a excellent source of healthy fat and protein.
Okay, well that's
protein is a big one. It's also a source of minerals: calcium, phosphorus, potassium, and vitamins A, D, and B12, and B2 and 3, I believe.
So there's a lot of good things in it. Why does it upset people's stomach?
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like it has that reputation.
Oh, it definitely does. So dairy has a protein makeup of whey and casein. So
okay.
Whey protein and casein. Most people hear of casein and whey from the powders. Whey especially. Whey is the most popular protein powder out there, to my knowledge, to date. It is the most popular because it's heavily bioavailable. Our body can absorb it quickly and use it quickly. It's cheap to make. Casein is probably second. Casein is what's called a slow digesting protein. So a lot of bodybuilders would say, drink this at night before bed after your workout because it takes longer to break down and your body will use it while you're asleep. But those proteins depends on the person, can be inflammatory. We'll get to lactose in a bit.
Okay.
Lactose is another reason. But I don't consume milk also for the reason of, I believe, I've not gone to a physician, but I did an elimination protocol to see what was going on and determined that casein and whey, I'm intolerant to them to a degree. I would get canker sores in my mouth constantly. And canker sores, if you've never had them, are these very painful sores that sit in your mouth for like 3 weeks, and you keep biting them, or when your toothbrush hits them, it's horribly painful. And so I just thought I'd research causes of canker sores. And then, of course, there's a long list, or some people say, we don't know. But one of the things that popped up was casein and whey. So I quit drinking whey protein shakes and casein protein shakes, and my canker sores stopped happening.
Interesting.
And the most recent canker sore I had came up after I ate some, I think it was cottage cheese, which is curdled dairy. It's very high protein, delicious, which is a shame. I believe it's chunks. I believe casein is the primary protein in that. So that's sort of now the other inflammatory is the lactose. Lactose, some people's stomachs just aren't, they've lost the ability to properly process lactose. I believe it's a form of sugar and causes upset stomach and all kinds of things. So those are sort of where dairy gets its. Also, there's the ethical side that people get on board with, which I'm more the nutritional focus. But the ethics of the dairy farming can be a little rough. It depends on the cows. Sure. Depends on the farm. I mean, there are ethical dairy farmers. They don't torture their animals or make them too fat and this and that. So it also depends on what the animal is eating, right? And that's why they tell breastfeeding mothers not to eat certain things, not to take certain vitamins or take certain supplements because it can come out in the milk. So there's some stigma around dairy because, well, what's that cow eating and what's coming out of the milk that it's producing?
So what does that mean? So say we can eat dairy. Mm-hmm. Does that mean we look at, the popular term is organic grass-fed? Is that something we should?
Yeah, I mean, it's generally, for meat, I know grass-fed is generally better. Okay. The cow is healthier. Now, some people complain about grass-fed. I actually told this to a friend of mine 2 days ago. I told her when I eat, her family has butchers in it, and she goes, "Oh, you like gamey tasting meat." Apparently, grass-fed beef has a gamier taste.
Interesting.
Makes sense. The animal's more athletic, healthier, more muscular, maybe a little leaner, because it's literally having to walk around to get its food as opposed to sitting there at a trough and just scarfing up corn, scarfing down corn, scarfing up. Sorry, but so yeah, I would probably say it's safer to what the animal's eating is going to produce healthier byproducts. So grass-fed, organic, organic can be dubious. It's pretty easy nowadays to get in that category. I think it's kind of a club. We could do an episode about organic because sometimes I'm skeptical. Oh, is it better? No, please. Pesticides aren't getting through banana skin. Please, organic. Some organic is good. I don't want to trash organic things.
We're not trashing organic.
No, when it comes to animal products, yeah, it's good to scrutinize. It's good. That's the boil it down. It's good to scrutinize the animal products. Look for all the pasture raised is great.
So when choosing dairy, pasture raised is one.
Yeah,
organic.
Honestly, so they've done studies about lactose intolerance, a lot of them, obviously. Yeah. They actually have done a few studies where they took lactose intolerant people and gave them, which this is going to be a new thing in today's episode that we haven't mentioned yet, the big thing, actually. They gave them dairy products made from cows who have low or no A1 casein. There's two types of casein in dairy, A1 and A2. It's just the name of the molecule. And what's weird is you go, well, what's the difference in A1 casein and A2 casein? One amino acid, the 67th amino acid. I don't know why I had to draw that. Just 67. Y'all saw that, right? 67th of 209 amino acids. There's a chain of amino acids. The 67th one is the only difference. I don't know any more than that. I just know that's the difference in A1 and A2, and A2 is much lower in inflammatory markers. So the people that consumed, they swapped out A1 for A2, and their lactose intolerance response was minimized drastically.
Well, I actually think there's a milk or creamer called A2.
A2, yeah.
It's really okay. So that's the molecule.
That's the molecule, and so that casein is much more digestible. It's less irritating to most people. And where they come from is there's just certain breed of cow that have breeds of cows that have A1 or A2. So it depends on the region the cow's from. What this company's done is taken all that work. You don't have to do that work. You can just go, oh, look, A2 milk at the grocery store, done.
Now, what about cheese?
Okay, I'm glad you asked that.
Yeah.
So there's other forms of dairy, of course, besides milk. All the milk byproducts or the milk products, cheese, yogurt, kefir, cottage cheese, and butter. Most of these, the higher the fat content of the dairy, like butter, for example, there's a very low chance you're going to have an inflammatory response to butter because all the protein has been taken out. It's a reduction. It's the fat. It's there's that like trace amounts of casein or whey in there, but they're so small that most people it doesn't trigger anything. Like a lactose intolerant person generally can eat butter. Generally, right? Okay. There might be an exception,
but because casein and whey have been taken
and lactose, there's none of that. There's no sugar in butter. It's just the fat. So there's the reason. Now, if you want the superior form of butter it's called Irish butter because they ferment the dairy then make butter. And that brings us into fermented forms of dairy, which is kefir and yogurt. The fermentation process destroys a lot of those irritating compounds in the dairy. Because fermentation, the bacteria that grows, it's bacterial growth is what that is. It eats up the sugar because bacteria, they want that sugar.
Okay.
And that's what they eat. So like when you make bread or even dairy, that sort of acidic smell that you get, that yeasty smell, for example, with bread, that's a chemical reaction. The yeast is eating the sugars, and the gas it releases as a result is that's why the bread fluffs up. Similar to dairy, different bacteria, but similar.
So, okay. Say we're going to continue to eat cheese and milk. I know A2. Look for A2. Look for things without the A1.
That isn't to say you can't drink A1.
Okay.
So I I know somebody who drinks A1 every single day. They don't give any thought to it, and it doesn't appear to bother them. My big beef nutritionally with drinking lots of milk is the sugar content.
Okay.
Basic milk has a lot of sugar in it. It's got a lot of carbohydrates in it, and they're not like complex carbs or fiber. There's no fiber in milk, so it's sugar, and it's naturally occurring. Which is better than table sugar, of course. But so you got to weigh your pros and cons there. If you just lifted real heavy or you've done a high intensity workout and you want some sugar, fine. Drink some milk. It's fine. It's protein and it's sugar. Great. But generally, people will drink like 16 ounces of milk with their dinner, which personally, just the taste. I've seen people like French fries and then they take a swig of milk. I'm like, stop. Just put me out of my misery and leave, or let me leave. But it's just a lot of sugar. You don't need dessert if you're drinking milk. So cheese, yogurt, these things are generally low in sugar. Now, yogurts are usually filled with like little fruit reductions and honey and things like that. High sugar to make the yogurt taste better. Plain yogurt tastes good. It's sort of an acquired taste. And you can add things to it to make it, like berries, nuts, and things like that, to make it taste, if you don't like that sour taste. But yogurt, plain Greek yogurt's usually better. It's got a lot more protein to it. Has high protein, on average per serving, 4 to 6 grams of sugar, pretty low. For the amount of protein you're getting, that's a pretty good trade-off.
So really the thing is sugar. Like that's
the thing is sugar, yeah. I have a problem with the amount.
And of course the if you are intolerant.
Yeah. Now cheeses, it's such a wide variety. Like cheese is I would say the most variety in dairy is in the cheese category, because the process of making cheese, I'm not a cheese maker here, I've never made my own cheese before, is complicated depending on what kind of cheese you're making. It is, I believe, a fermentation process, also why lactose intolerant people generally tolerate cheese. It's mostly the fat again. Now, what's cool about cheese is it retains a lot of that protein as opposed to butter. So now, if I had to give you the best cheeses off the top of my head, my favorite for low inflammatory, it would be hard cheeses like Parmesan, not the kind in the can that's a mixture of corn flour and, no. Parmesan, like $7 triangle of cheese you buy, and you grate it yourself. It's salty. It's so fermented that it's destroyed most of the inflammatory markers. But superior to Parmesan, because it's still cow, is any dairy made from sheep or goat. They generally have almost little to no A1 naturally.
So goat cheese, sheep cheese.
Sheep cheese is kind of rare. You might, there's a cheese made from sheep? Yes. Feta cheese. Caveat about feta. I discovered this recently because I was looking for some. They make feta out of cow's milk too. Traditional Greek feta is sheep.
Interesting.
Should be sheep or goat. I think it's sheep. It's so salty and delicious. I love feta cheese. It's great for you. Feta's a great one, if it's from sheep, preferably. But my favorite cheese of all time is called Pecorino Romano.
Okay.
It's like Parmesan but made from sheep, so has even a stronger flavor. It's salty. And a little goes a long way. Pecorino Romano is amazing. If you never had it, you should get some right now.
Now, real quick.
Immediately. Sorry.
Before they go out and get it, where can they get stuff like that? Because that seems like you don't find that at Food City.
So there's 2 categories of cheese and dairy aisle in the grocery store. Well, most of I would call it's going to sound gross, wet dairy and less wet dairy. I don't know. The milk section kind of bleeds into the yogurt, sour cream, cream cheese, and butter. Yep. And then that's where all your shredded cheeses and your like cheap cheddars and blocks of cheeses are, right? All those things. You'll probably find mascarpone there. Now, there's another section, generally, like if you go to Ingles, I can speak immediately to that. You go to Ingles, it's around the corner from the bakery is what I call the fancy cheese aisle, which is where it's all in like a bin and it's like blocks and chunks, and it's sort of categorized by country usually. That's where you're going to get these better cheeses, more expensive. You got to pay. Here's the thing, though. With these hard, salty cheeses, a little goes a long way. So it's not as bad on the bank, but it still can be pricey. Aldi actually sells some of those cheeses for like a third less.
Interesting.
Yeah. So like I can't find Pecorino at Aldi. When I do, I'm going to scream and scare everybody around me because I'll be so excited. But They have Parmesan and Asiago and some of the other hard cheeses there. So, yeah.
Well, guys, go to the fancy cheese aisle.
Fancy cheese aisle. International cheese aisle, maybe. Sounds better than fancy, I guess.
All right. Well, Lucas, is there anything else we want to go over with dairy?
Watch out. No, just a quick recap. Watch out for sugar.
Yep.
And test out if you've thought your whole life, I can't have dairy because it tears. Give A2 a try, or give sheep or goat cheese a try.
I love it.
You might find that you can have dairy again.
Interesting. Well, guys, this has been another episode of Dive Into Diet. Lucas, I really appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
Guys, don't go away, because as always, we'll be back next time.
Don't go away.